The dust cloud on the horizon looked like a harbinger of death, and Olivia Jensen watched it approach with the same hollow resignation she had felt for months now, standing on the porch of her family's ranch with her father's rifle across her knees and her heart somewhere down in her worn boots. The year was 1881, and Wichita, Kansas had seen better days, but none had fallen quite as far as the Jensen Ranch, where the cattle had dwindled to 17 head. The hands had all ridden off to find paying work, and the banknote came due in exactly 43 days. She was 23 years old and had buried her father 6 months ago, her mother 2 years before that, and her only brother had died of fever when she was 17. The ranch sprawled across 300 acres that had once been the pride of central Kansas, with good water and better grass, but drought and disease and plain bad luck had stripped it down to bones. The house needed repairs she could not afford. The barn sagged like an old man's shoulders. The fences were held together with hope and baling wire, and even the hope was running thin. The rider emerged from the dust like something out of a fever dream, tall in the saddle on a buckskin horse that looked like it could run from here to Colorado without breaking stride. He wore a dark hat pulled low and a trail coat that had seen better years, and when he reined up at the gate, Olivia stood slowly, keeping the rifle casual but ready. Strangers were not uncommon on the trail, but a woman alone had to be careful, even in broad daylight. "Madam," he called out, touching the brim of his hat. His voice carried across the yard, deep and steady. "Name is Xander Ashford. I am looking for work." Olivia felt something bitter rise in her throat. Work. She had not paid wages in 4 months, had barely scraped together enough to feed herself and the animals she had left. "I am not hiring," she said, and her voice came out harder than she meant it to. The man sat his horse for a long moment, and even from this distance she could see him taking in the ranch with eyes that knew what they were looking at. The sagging barn, the empty corrals, the fields that should have been full of cattle. "Looks like you could use help," he said finally. "Looks like a lot of things," Olivia replied, "but looking does not pay bills, and I have got none to spare for hired hands." Xander swung down from his horse in one smooth motion and led the animal to the gate. Up close, she could see he was older than she had first thought, maybe 30 or 32, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the sun and eyes the color of storm clouds. There was something steady about him, something that made her grip on the rifle relax just slightly. "Did not say you had to pay me," he said. That made her blink. "Every man wants paying. Every man wants different things." He looked past her at the house, at the ranch stretching out behind it. "I've got some savings, not a fortune, but enough. I have been working other people's land for 15 years, madam, and I am tired of it. I want a stake in something, a real stake." Olivia's heart was beating faster now, though she could not have said why. "You are talking nonsense. I am talking sense." Xander's eyes came back to hers, direct and honest. "You need help. I need a future. I will work this ranch, put my own money into it, and when we get it back on its feet, I want a partnership, half ownership." The words hit her like a physical blow. Half ownership of the ranch her father had built, that her grandfather had started. The ranch that was all she had left of her family, of her history. "You are out of your mind," she said, but her voice shook. "Maybe." He did not look away. "But you are going to lose this place in a few months if something does not change. I can see that from here. And I would rather gamble on working toward something of my own than spend another decade making other men rich." Olivia wanted to tell him to ride on, to take his horse and his offer and his storm cloud eyes somewhere else. But the truth was a weight in her chest, heavy and undeniable. He was right. She was going to lose everything. The bank would foreclose, and she would be left with nothing but the clothes on her back and memories that would not keep her fed. "Why here?" she asked quietly. "Why this ranch?" Xander was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer. "I rode past here 3 years ago on my way north. Your father was out mending fence, and I stopped to water my horse. He gave me a meal and told me about this place, about building it up from nothing. I remembered that, and when I heard in town that Jensen's daughter was trying to hold it alone." He trailed off, then shrugged. "Seemed like maybe we could help each other." The sun was climbing higher and the day was getting hot. Olivia could feel sweat trickling down her spine beneath her work shirt. She should say no. She should send him away. But desperation was a terrible advisor, and she was so desperately tired of fighting alone. "I cannot pay you anything," she said. "Not until we sell cattle if we can get the herd back up. I know. And half ownership is too much. A quarter. If you are putting in money and work, you can have a quarter stake." Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "A third, she agreed before she could talk herself out of it. "But I am running this ranch. I make the final decisions." "Yes, madam." He smiled then, just slightly, and it changed his whole face. "Should I put my horse up?" Olivia lowered the rifle completely and nodded toward the barn. "There is space in the second stall. Feed is running low, but there is enough for one more animal." She paused. "There is a spare room in the house, but it has not been used in a while. Might be dusty. I have slept in worse places." Xander gathered his reins and led his horse toward the barn, and Olivia watched him go with her heart hammering against her ribs. What had she just done? That night, after a supper of beans and cornbread that stretched her supplies even thinner, they sat at the kitchen table and Olivia laid out the brutal truth. The banknote was for $800, due in 6 weeks. She had maybe $30 to her name. The cattle she had left were not enough to sell for that kind of money, even at top price. They needed to rebuild the herd, repair the fences, get the ranch productive again, and they needed to do it in a time frame that was functionally impossible. Xander listened without interrupting, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, his face thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I've got $400 saved. That is half the note." Olivia's breath caught. $400 was a fortune for a working cowhand. "I cannot take your life savings." "You are not taking it, I am investing it." His eyes met hers across the table. "This is my stake, remember, my future too now." "But if we lose the ranch anyway, then we lose it," Xander said calmly. "But we will lose it fighting, not sitting still, and maybe we do not lose, maybe we find a way." Olivia felt something tight in her chest loosen just slightly. It was not hope, not quite, but it was something close to it. "The bank will want the other 400. Then we get it." He leaned forward. "I saw a notice in town. The railroad is buying cattle for their work camps, paying premium prices for immediate delivery. If we could gather wild cattle from the scrubland east of here, we could sell them quick." "Gathering wild cattle is dangerous work. It is just the two of us." "I have done it before." Xander's voice was steady. "And you look like you can handle yourself." Olivia thought of the rifle she had been carrying, of the years she had worked alongside her father and brother. "I can. Then we start tomorrow." They did. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of hard work and harder riding. The scrubland east of Wichita was tough country, full of rocky ravines and thick brush where wild cattle had gone feral over the years. They were mean animals, half-starved and completely untrusting, and rounding them up was like trying to rope the wind. Xander worked like 3 men, and Olivia found herself watching him when she should have been focused on the cattle. He sat his horse like he had been born in the saddle, moving with an easy grace that spoke of long years of practice. He was patient with the animals, firm but not cruel, and he treated her like an equal partner, asking her opinion and listening when she gave it. On the 5th day, they were chasing a particularly stubborn bull through a narrow canyon when Olivia's horse stumbled on loose rock. She felt herself going over, felt the sickening moment of weightlessness, and then Xander was there, his arm locking around her waist and hauling her across his saddle before she could hit the ground. They ended up in a tangle, her pressed against his chest, his arm still around her, both breathing hard. "You all right?" His voice was rough, concerned. Olivia's heart was racing, and not just from the near fall. She could feel the solid strength of him, smell the sweat and leather and something else, something distinctly him. "I am fine," she managed, pulling away. Her horse had stopped a few yards off, looking sheepish. "Thank you. Anytime." Xander let her go, but his eyes lingered on her face for a moment longer than necessary. Something passed between them, unspoken but real, and Olivia felt heat that had nothing to do with the Kansas sun. They did not talk about it. They went back to chasing cattle, to building a herd one stubborn animal at a time. But something had shifted, and they both knew it. By the end of 2 weeks, they had gathered 30 head of wild cattle, rough and rangy but solid enough to sell. Xander took them to the railroad camp while Olivia stayed behind to watch the ranch, and when he came back 3 days later, he had $700 in his saddlebag and a grin that lit up his whole face. "They paid premium," he said, swinging down from his horse. "The foreman said if we can bring more, he will buy them too." Olivia's hands were shaking as she counted the money. $700. With Xander's $400, they had more than enough to pay the bank note with money left over for supplies, for repairs, for starting to build the ranch back up. "We did it," she whispered. "We did." Xander was watching her, his expression soft. "You did, Olivia. This was your fight." "I just helped." She looked up at him, at this man who had ridden into her life 6 weeks ago and turned everything around. "You did more than help. You saved this place. You saved me." "Maybe we saved each other," Xander said quietly. The moment stretched between them, charged with everything they had not said, everything they had been dancing around for weeks. Olivia took a breath. "Xander, I am in love with you," he said, the words coming out in a rush like he had been holding them back too long. "I know that is probably not what you want to hear, and I know we have got a business arrangement, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it. I have been falling in love with you since the day I rode up to this ranch, and working beside you these past weeks has only made it worse. Better. I do not know, but I had to tell you." Olivia's heart was hammering so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. "You are right," she said, and watched his face fall. "That is not what I want to hear." She took a step closer. "What I want to hear is that you are going to stay. That this is not just about the ranch or a business arrangement, that you mean it." Hope flared in his eyes. "I mean it. Every word." "Then you should know I am in love with you too," Olivia said. And then she was in his arms and he was kissing her like she was air and he was drowning, and it felt like coming home after a long time lost. They stood there in the yard as the sun set, holding each other, and for the first time in years, Olivia felt like everything might actually be all right. The next morning, they rode into Wichita together and paid off the bank note. The banker looked surprised to see them, even more surprised to see the cash. "Did not think you would make it, Miss Jensen," he said, counting the bills. "I had help," Olivia said, glancing at Xander. "So I see." The banker made a notation in his ledger and stamped the note paid in full. "You have got yourself free and clear now. What are you planning to do with the place?" "Build it back up," Olivia said firmly. "The way my father would have wanted." They stopped by the land office on the way out of town and registered Xander as a 1/3 partner in the Jensen ranch. It made it official, made it real. When they rode back out toward home, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. The work did not stop. If anything, it intensified. They used the leftover money to buy lumber and nails to repair the barn and the fences. They gathered more wild cattle and bred them with the stock they had left, slowly building a herd that would sustain them. Xander proved to have a knack for horse trading, and he brought in 3 good mares that they could breed for sale. The ranch started to come back to life. It was slow, incremental progress, but it was progress. And through it all, Olivia and Xander worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. They did not talk much about the future, about what they were to each other beyond partners and lovers. But it was there in every touch, every shared glance, every quiet evening sitting on the porch together watching the sun go down. Olivia had never felt this way about anyone, had never imagined she could. Xander was steady where she was fierce, calm where she was passionate, and together they balanced each other perfectly. 3 months after Xander had first ridden up to the ranch, he found Olivia in the barn mucking out stalls and said, without preamble, "Marry me." She straightened, pitchfork in hand, and stared at him. "What, marry me?" He stepped closer, his hat in his hands. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know we have been focused on the ranch, but I do not want to wait. I want to build this life with you, Olivia. Not as partners, not as business associates, but as husband and wife, if you will have me." Olivia's eyes were burning. She set down the pitchfork carefully. "Are you sure? I am not easy. I am stubborn and proud, and I do not always know when to ask for help." "I know." Xander smiled. "I am counting on it. So what do you say?" "Yes," Olivia said, and then she was laughing and crying at the same time, and Xander was lifting her off her feet and spinning her around in the middle of the barn. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Wichita, with the minister and his wife as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple dress she had been her mother's, and Xander wore his cleanest shirt and a new vest he had bought special for the occasion. It was not a grand affair, but it was theirs, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Olivia felt like she had finally found the place she was meant to be. The first year of their marriage was hard work tempered with deep happiness. The ranch continued to grow and thrive. They hired 2 hands when they could finally afford wages. Good men who worked hard and did not ask too many questions about how the Jensen ranch had gone from the brink of failure to success in less than a year. Olivia found herself amazed at how easily they had fallen into partnership, into marriage. Xander was everything she had not known she needed. Strong but gentle, determined but flexible, passionate but patient. He made her laugh when she was tired, held her when she was sad, and worked beside her when she needed a partner. And in the quiet of their bedroom at night, he loved her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished in a way she had never experienced before. By their first anniversary, the ranch was profitable again. They had a herd of nearly 200 cattle, a string of horses that were gaining a reputation for quality, and enough money in the bank to weather a bad season or two. Olivia stood on the porch one evening, watching Xander work with a young horse in the corral, and felt a contentment so deep it almost frightened her. "You look happy," a voice said, and she turned to find Mary Patterson, their nearest neighbor, riding up on her gray mare. Mary was in her 50s, a widow who ran her own small ranch with the help of her grown sons, and she had been a friend to Olivia even in the darkest days. "I am," Olivia admitted. "Is that strange?" "Not even a little." Mary dismounted and joined her on the porch. "You have earned it, honey. You and that man of yours. The whole county is talking about how you two turned this place around." Olivia felt herself flush. "We just worked hard. You did more than that. You fought for what was yours." Mary squeezed her arm. "Your daddy would be proud." The words hit Olivia hard in a good way. She hoped it was true. She hoped her father, wherever he was, could see what she and Xander had built, how they had saved his legacy and made it their own. That night, curled against Xander's side in their bed, Olivia said quietly, "Do you ever regret it? Investing everything you had in this place in me?" Xander's arm tightened around her. "Not for 1 second. This is the best decision I ever made. You are the best decision I ever made. Even when I am stubborn, especially then." She could hear the smile in his voice. "I like you stubborn. Keeps me on my toes." Olivia laughed softly and pressed a kiss to his chest. "I love you, Xander Ashford." "I love you too, Olivia Ashford." He tilted her chin up and kissed her properly. "And I am going to keep loving you for the rest of my life." It was a promise he kept. The second year brought new challenges. A harsh winter tested their preparations, and they lost some cattle to the cold, but they had planned for losses and weathered the storm. Spring came with heavy rains that turned the prairie green and lush, and their herd thrived. That spring also brought news that changed everything. Olivia had been feeling poorly for a few weeks, tired and queasy in the mornings, and when she finally rode into town to see the doctor, he confirmed what she had started to suspect. She was going to have a baby. She rode home in a daze, her hand pressed to her still flat stomach, trying to process the reality of it. A baby. She was going to be a mother. Xander was going to be a father. Their family was growing. She found him in the barn, checking on a mare that was close to foaling. "Xander," she said, and something in her voice made him turn immediately, concern on his face. "What is wrong? What did the doctor say?" "Nothing is wrong." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears this time. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Xander just stared at her. Then a smile broke across his face like sunrise, wide and joyful and absolutely radiant. "A baby," he repeated, and then he was across the barn and sweeping her into his arms, careful but exuberant. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," Olivia laughed, holding on to him. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Xander pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "Olivia, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and so full of love I feel like I might burst. We are going to be parents. We are," she agreed and kissed him. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia was sick for the first 4 months, barely able to keep food down, and Xander hovered over her like a concerned mother hen. She tried to keep working, but he put his foot down when he found her attempting to lift a heavy saddle. "You are going to rest," he said firmly, taking the saddle from her hands. "Doctor's orders." "The doctor said I should avoid heavy lifting, not stop working entirely," Olivia protested. "Then you can do light work, bookkeeping, planning. But no more hauling feed or mending fences or breaking horses." His voice softened. "Please, Olivia, let me take care of you. Let me take care of both of you." She wanted to argue, hated feeling useless, but the fear in his eyes stopped her. He was scared, she realized. Scared of losing her, of losing the baby, of something going wrong. "All right," she said quietly, "but I am still running this ranch. I would not dream of anything else." Xander kissed her forehead. "You just have to do it from a chair for a while." As it turned out, running the ranch from a chair was harder than Olivia had anticipated. She was used to being in the thick of things, to working with her hands and her body. Being relegated to paperwork and planning chafed. But Xander was right, and she knew it. She had responsibilities now that went beyond the ranch. The baby was due in late October, and as summer turned to fall, Olivia grew round and uncomfortable. The heat was oppressive, and she spent most of her time in the shade of the porch, watching Xander and their hired hands work. Mary Patterson visited often, bringing advice and baby clothes and a calm, practical presence that Olivia appreciated more than she could say. "You are going to be a wonderful mother," Mary told her one afternoon. watching Olivia knit a tiny blanket with more enthusiasm than skill. "I hope so." Olivia dropped a stitch and swore softly. "I do not know the first thing about babies. Nobody does before they have one. You learn." Mary's eyes were kind. "And you have got a good man to learn with. That makes all the difference." It did, Olivia knew. Xander was attentive and caring, rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings and reading aloud to her from the newspaper. He talked to her belly, telling their unborn child about the ranch and the horses and how much they were already loved. It made Olivia's heart ache in the best way. The baby came early, on a cool October morning when the sky was the color of steel. Olivia's water broke while she was making breakfast, and Xander went pale when he saw the puddle on the floor. "It is time," Olivia said, trying to sound calm even though her heart was racing. "You need to fetch Mary and the doctor." Xander was moving before she finished speaking, running for the barn and his horse. He made the ride into town and back in record time, bringing both the doctor and Mary, who took immediate charge of the situation. The labor was long and painful, lasting well into the night. Olivia had never experienced pain like this, wave after wave of it, consuming and relentless. Xander stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement, and she clung to him like an anchor. Finally, as dawn was breaking, the baby came. A boy, small but healthy, with a powerful set of lungs and a shock of dark hair. The doctor cleaned him up and placed him in Olivia's arms, and she looked down at her son and felt her entire world realign. "He is perfect," she whispered. Xander was crying, she realized, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and his child. "He is," he agreed, his voice thick. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Samuel after Olivia's father. Samuel Ashford, born October 15, 1883, on a ranch in Kansas that his parents had fought to save. He was the future, the next generation, the reason for everything they had built. The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Samuel was a good baby, but he still needed feeding and changing and constant attention. Olivia and Xander took turns walking him when he was fussy, singing lullabies that they half remembered and half invented. The ranch work continued, but it took a backseat to the tiny person who had taken over their lives. Xander proved to be a devoted father, as attentive to Samuel as he was to Olivia. He made a cradle with his own hands, smooth and sturdy, and rocked his son to sleep more nights than not. Watching him with Samuel made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. "You are good at this," she told him one night, watching him change Samuel's diaper with practiced ease. "So are you." Xander smiled at her over their son's head. "We make a good team." "We do," Olivia agreed, and it was true. They made a good team in everything. The years rolled by, marked by the turning of the seasons and the growth of their family. Samuel was joined by a daughter, Emma, 2 years later, and then another son, Thomas, 2 years after that. The house that had once seemed too big and empty was now full of noise and life, children's laughter echoing through the rooms. The ranch continued to prosper. They expanded their holdings, buying the adjacent property when it came up for sale, and their herd grew to over 500 head. Xander's reputation as a horseman spread, and people came from 3 counties over to buy his stock. Olivia managed the business side, keeping the books and negotiating sales with a sharp mind and sharper tongue. They hired more hands as the ranch grew, good men who became part of the extended family. They built a new barn, larger and sturdier than the old one, and added a wing to the house to accommodate their growing family. The place that had been on the brink of collapse when Xander first rode up was now one of the most successful ranches in central Kansas. But the true success, Olivia knew, was not measured in cattle or acres or money in the bank. It was measured in the life they had built together, in the family they had created, in the love that deepened with each passing year. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Xander took Olivia on a picnic to a hill overlooking the ranch. It was a warm June day, and they sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree, watching their children play in the grass below. Samuel was 12 now, already showing signs of becoming a fine horseman like his father. Emma was 10, smart and fierce and utterly fearless. Thomas was 8, gentle and thoughtful, with a way with animals that bordered on magical. "You remember the day I rode up to this ranch?" Xander asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Every detail," Olivia said. "I thought you were crazy, offering to invest everything you had in a failing ranch and a woman you did not know." "I was crazy." Xander kissed the top of her head. "Crazy in love, even if I did not know it yet." Olivia leaned into him, content. "You saved me, you know, saved this place." "I do not know what would have happened if you had not come along when you did." "You would have found a way," Xander said firmly. "You are the strongest person I know, Olivia. You would have survived." "Maybe," she allowed, "but I would not have lived, not really. You gave me that. You gave me a life worth living." "We gave each other that," Xander corrected. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you ever regret it, letting me in, giving me a stake in this place?" Olivia pulled back to look at him, at the man who had ridden into her life and changed everything. His hair was graying at the temples now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. More importantly, he was still the best man she had ever known. "Not for one single second," she said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Xander Ashford. You and our children and this life we have built together. I would not change any of it." "Good," Xander said, and kissed her properly. "Because I plan on spending the next 50 years making sure you stay happy." "Only 50?" Olivia teased. "Well, I figure after that we will renegotiate the contract," Xander said, straight-faced, and she laughed and kissed him again. Below them, their children were still playing, their voices carrying on the warm breeze. The ranch stretched out in all directions, green and prosperous and alive. This was home, Olivia thought. This was family. This was everything she had fought for and more than she had ever dreamed of. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Samuel grew into a young man, tall and capable, and took on more responsibility around the ranch. Emma developed a passion for breeding horses and proved to have an eye for quality that rivaled her father's. Thomas surprised everyone by showing an aptitude for numbers and took over much of the bookkeeping from Olivia. When Samuel was 18, he met a girl in town, the daughter of the feed store owner, and fell head over heels in love. Olivia watched her son court his sweetheart with all the earnest intensity of youth, and it reminded her so much of Xander that her heart ached. They were married the following year, and Samuel brought his bride, Catherine, home to the ranch. She was a sweet girl with a practical nature and a strong back, and she fit into the family like she had always been there. Emma, at 16, declared that she had no intention of marrying any time soon because she was too busy with the horses. "Thank you very much." Olivia hid her smile and privately thought that when the right person came along, Emma would change her tune quickly enough. But there was no rush. Emma was young, and she had plenty of time to figure out what she wanted. Thomas, at 14, was still finding his way. He was quieter than his siblings, more introspective, but he had a good heart and a sharp mind. Xander spent hours with him, teaching him about the land and the animals and the business of ranching, and Thomas soaked it up like a sponge. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Olivia and Xander sat on the porch swing, watching the stars come out. They were both in their 40s now, no longer young but not yet old, still strong and capable but feeling the weight of the years in their bones after a long day's work. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Olivia asked quietly. "When we are too old to run this place ourselves." Xander considered the question. "Samuel is ready to take over most of the day-to-day operations now. Emma will run the horse breeding program better than I ever could. Thomas will handle the business end. They will be fine." "I know," Olivia said, "but it is strange thinking about stepping back. This ranch has been my whole life." "It still will be," Xander said gently, "just in a different way. We will be the ones sitting on the porch, offering advice when asked and keeping our mouths shut when not, watching our grandchildren grow up, enjoying what we have built." Grandchildren. The word sent a little thrill through Olivia. "You think Samuel and Catherine will have children soon?" "I would bet on it," Xander smiled. "I see the way they look at each other reminds me of us." "We were not that young," Olivia protested. "No, but we were just as besotted." Xander pulled her closer. "Still are as far as I am concerned." Olivia settled against his side, comfortable and content. "Still are," she agreed softly. Xander's prediction proved accurate. Catherine announced her pregnancy that fall, and the following spring, Olivia and Xander became grandparents to a baby girl named Rose. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion. This was the future, secured and thriving. This was the legacy. Rose was followed by a grandson, then another granddaughter, and then Emma surprised everyone by falling in love with a young ranch hand from Colorado who came through looking for work and stayed for the horses. They were married within the year, and Emma's husband, David, proved to be as skilled with horses as she was. Together, they expanded the breeding program until it was known throughout Kansas and beyond. Thomas, in his early 20s, took over more and more of the business operations. He had a head for numbers and a talent for negotiation that served the ranch well. He was courting a schoolteacher from Wichita, a quiet, intelligent woman named Margaret who shared his love of books and thoughtful conversation. Olivia liked her immediately and was not surprised when Thomas announced their engagement. By the time Olivia and Xander reached their 20th wedding anniversary, the ranch was a thriving multi-generational operation. The original 300 acres had expanded to over 1,000. The cattle herd numbered in the thousands. The horse breeding program was nationally recognized. The Xander Ashford Ranch, as it was now known, was one of the most successful in the state, but more than that, it was a home. The house that Olivia had once rattled around in alone was now full to bursting with children and grandchildren, with noise and laughter and life. Sunday dinners brought everyone together around a table that had been extended twice to accommodate the growing family. Holidays were chaotic, joyful affairs with too much food and too many people, and exactly the right amount of love. On a warm summer evening, Olivia stood on the porch of the house she had grown up in, the house she had nearly lost, the house that was now the heart of a family empire. Xander came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," Olivia said honestly. "How close I came to losing this place, how you rode in and changed everything, how we built all of this together." "Best investment I ever made," Xander said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Olivia turned in his arms to face him. There was gray in his hair now and lines on his face, but his eyes were still the same storm cloud gray that had captivated her from the first. "I love you," she said. "I have loved you since the day you offered to invest everything in a failing ranch and a desperate woman. I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," Xander replied, his voice rough with emotion. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia, the best decision I ever made, the best partner I could have asked for, and I will love you beyond my last breath, into whatever comes after." He kissed her then, slow and sweet and deep, and Olivia kissed him back with all the passion and love and gratitude in her heart. Around them, the ranch hummed with life. Inside the house, their grandchildren were playing. In the fields, their cattle grazed peacefully. In the barn, their horses moved in their stalls. This was the life they had built together, from nothing but hope and hard work, and a crazy gamble made by a cowboy who invested everything he had in a woman and a dream. It was more than Olivia could have ever imagined that day. She stood on this porch with a rifle across her knees, watching a stranger ride toward her through a cloud of dust. As the years rolled on into their 50s and 60s, Olivia and Xander gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Samuel took over as the primary manager, with Emma running the horse program and Thomas handling the finances and business dealings. It was a smooth transition, made easier by the fact that their children had grown up learning every aspect of the operation. Olivia found she enjoyed the slower pace. She had spent so many years fighting, first to save the ranch and then to build it up, that it was strange but pleasant to simply exist. She spent her mornings in the garden she had always wanted but never had time for, growing vegetables and flowers with equal enthusiasm. She spent her afternoons with her grandchildren, teaching them to ride and telling them stories about their grandfather Jensen and the old days. Xander spent his time training horses, though at a much more relaxed pace than before. He had a gift for it, a patience and understanding that made even the most stubborn animal respond to him. He also spent hours sitting on the porch, watching the ranch operate, occasionally offering advice when asked but mostly content to observe the fruits of their labor. They traveled some, taking trips to Denver and Kansas City, and even once to St. Louis, seeing the world beyond their corner of Kansas. But they always came back to the ranch, to the home they had built together. It was where they belonged. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. It seemed like the entire county showed up, filling the yard and spilling into the house. There was music and dancing and so much food that the tables groaned under the weight. People made speeches, recounting stories about Olivia and Xander, about the ranch, about the legacy they had built. Samuel stood up, tall and commanding like his father, and raised his glass. "To my parents," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd, "who taught us that love and hard work can overcome anything, who built something from nothing and gave us a foundation to build our own lives on, who showed us what it means to be partners in business and in life. We love you, and we are grateful for everything you have given us." The crowd echoed the toast, glasses raised, and Olivia felt tears streaming down her face. Xander's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, and when she looked at him, he was crying too. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, they lay in bed together, exhausted but happy. 30 years, Olivia said softly. "Can you believe it?" "Feels like both longer and shorter," Xander replied. "Like we have lived a dozen lifetimes together, but also like you just agreed to marry me yesterday." Olivia rolled to face him, pressing close. "I would do it all over again. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, all of it. So would I." Xander kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Here is to 30 more." 30 more, Olivia agreed, though she knew that was probably optimistic. They were both in their 60s now, still healthy but feeling the years. But however much time they had left, she intended to spend it exactly like this, in the arms of the man who had saved her and whom she had saved in return. The final years of their lives were quiet and peaceful. They watched their grandchildren grow and start having children of their own, great-grandchildren who ran through the house and the yard with the same wild energy their parents and grandparents had before them. The ranch continued to prosper under Samuel's management, adapting to changing times but holding on to the core values that Olivia and Xander had instilled. Emma's horse breeding program gained national recognition, and she traveled to shows and competitions, bringing home ribbons and accolades. Thomas expanded the business into new markets, always conservative but smart in his investments. Their children had taken what Olivia and Xander built and made it even better, and that was the greatest gift of all. Olivia's health began to fail when she was 72, her heart weakening gradually despite the doctor's best efforts. She knew she was dying, could feel it in the increasing fatigue and the shortness of breath, but she was not afraid. She had lived a full life, a good life, better than she had any right to expect. Xander rarely left her side in those final months. He sat with her in the room they had shared for over 40 years, holding her hand and telling her stories about their life together. He reminded her of the day they met, of their wedding, of the birth of their children, of 1,000 small moments that had made up their life together. "I am not ready to lose you," he said one night, his voice breaking. "I do not know how to be in this world without you." Olivia squeezed his hand weakly. "You will," she said, "because our children need you and our grandchildren need you, and you are strong. You have always been strong." "I am only strong because of you," Xander replied. "Then remember me," Olivia said softly, "and let that be enough." She died on a spring morning with the windows open and a soft breeze carrying the scent of new grass and wildflowers. Xander was holding her hand, and her children were gathered around the bed, and her last thought was that she had been incredibly, impossibly lucky. The funeral was enormous, attended by what seemed like half of Kansas. Olivia had touched so many lives, had built something that mattered, and people came to pay their respects and share their stories. Xander sat through it all in a daze, accepting condolences but not really hearing them. In the weeks and months that followed, he struggled. The house felt empty without Olivia, the ranch too quiet. He went through the motions, but his heart was not in it. His children worried about him, hovering and offering support that he appreciated but could not really accept. It was Rose, his oldest granddaughter, now a young woman of 25 with children of her own, who finally reached him. She came to visit one afternoon and found him sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. "Grandpa," she said, settling into the chair next to him. "Tell me about Grandma." "About when you first met her." Xander looked at her, at this young woman who had Olivia's eyes and his own stubborn chin. "Why?" "Because I want to know. Because your story is part of our story and I want to understand it." Rose leaned forward. "Please," so Xander told her. He told her about riding up to a failing ranch and seeing a woman on the porch with a rifle and hope in her eyes. He told her about the gamble he took, investing everything he had in a place and a person he barely knew. He told her about falling in love, about building a life, about the years of hard work and deep joy. As he talked, he found that the pain in his chest eased just slightly. These were good memories, precious memories, and sharing them kept Olivia alive in a way that grieving alone did not. Rose listened intently, and when he finished, she said, "That is the most romantic thing I have ever heard. You saved each other." "We did," Xander agreed, "and she gave me the best 44 years of my life." "Then honor that," Rose said gently. "Keep living, Grandpa. Keep being part of this family and this ranch. That is what she would want." Xander knew she was right. Olivia would not want him to fade away, to give up. She had been a fighter her whole life, and she would expect him to keep fighting too, so he did. He engaged with the ranch again, offering advice and support to Samuel. He spent time with his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandmother and watching them grow. He kept Olivia's garden going, tending the flowers she had loved. The grief never fully left, but it became manageable, woven into the fabric of his life rather than dominating it. He had loved and been loved, had built something lasting, and that was enough. Xander lived to be 83 years old, active and engaged until the very end. When he finally passed, it was peacefully in his sleep, in the bed he had shared with Olivia, in the house they had saved together. His children found him in the morning, looking peaceful, and they knew without asking that he was finally with his beloved wife again. They buried him next to Olivia on the hill overlooking the ranch, under the cottonwood tree where they had celebrated their 10th anniversary all those years ago. The whole family gathered, 4 generations strong, and told stories and shed tears and celebrated 2 lives well lived. The ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, always adapting but never losing sight of its roots. Samuel ran it until he passed it to his own son. Emma's children took over the horse program. Thomas's daughter became the business manager. The Jensen Ashford Ranch remained one of the premier operations in Kansas, a testament to the power of love and hard work, and taking a chance on another person. And sometimes, when the wind was right, people swore they could see 2 figures standing on that hill under the cottonwood tree, hand in hand, watching over the land they had built together. Whether it was real or just wishful thinking, no one could say. But it brought comfort to those who remained, knowing that the love story of Olivia Jensen and Xander Ashford had not truly ended. It lived on in every acre of land, every head of cattle, every horse in the barn, and every child born into the family they had created. Their story became legend in the county, told and retold with varying degrees of accuracy, but always with the same core truth: that a cowboy had once invested everything he had in a woman who was holding together a ranch with nothing left, and together they had built something that would last forever. It was a story of love and faith and partnership, of taking a chance and working hard and never giving up. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all. Not the land or the cattle or the money, but the proof that 2 people, when they come together with love and determination, can overcome anything. That even when all seems lost, when you are down to your last hope and your last dollar, the right partner can change everything. Olivia and Xander had shown that to be true, and their descendants would carry that lesson forward for generations to come, building on the foundation those 2 brave souls had laid so many years ago on a failing ranch in Kansas.